Good evening, my heroic hominids! The Order's introduction in the Roaming the Ether event was so meticulously written that it brought a new standard to lore-heavy event narratives in ZZZ. Before I get into the analysis of the event and what it means for the Order, do you think Spacebar is alive? Well, in the event, he gets his laptop on the same day he officially enters the Defense Force. Over the course of 2 years, he makes 12 journal entries. This mirrors Virgil's Aeneid, one of the most highly regarded stories of all time. This poem from 19 BC follows Aeneas on his prophesized journey through 12 books. Virgil snatched him from the Iliad and connected the disembodied tales to tell his story in 2 halves. The first half follows Aeneas from Troy to Italy, and the second details the war leading into the final duel that Aeneas emerges victorious from. This is also what inspired the myth of Romulus and Remus establishing Rome. I know it's been a minute, so let me refresh your memory. In the first journal entry, he writes, "Today's my first official day in the Defense Force, and my first day of owning this laptop. Mom bought me this thing to commemorate my enlistment. Mom even asked me to write down her home phone number so I wouldn't forget what it was and fail to call her." Between the first and sixth journal entries, he meets the Obel Squad members and encounters a rally that the Order is holding. In the 7th journal entry, he writes, "I've been feeling more homesick ever since I called home last time, so I booked in for 3 days of short leave. I had my ticket bought and everything, but a mission came up while waiting for the bus, so I immediately assembled for support. By the time I got back, the bus had already departed and tickets were sold out for the next 3 days. I called to tell Mom I couldn't make it back." In the next journal entry, the disaster happened and the Shiyu pillars were detonated. He was the sole survivor and had a new set of challenges to overcome. Before leaving his laptop in the safe room, he wrote, "This is my final journal entry. After all, I can't find anyone from that order and my body has already reached its limit. If I had known my ether aptitude was so high, I should have insisted on applying for the Obsidian division a long time ago. Traces of recent human activity found nearby indicate that this disaster was not of natural causes. This may just be my limit reached. I have to get out of here without relying on my carrot. Only by leaving this hollow can I spread the gospel of the Order. I've been slowly strolling through these lonely hollows for days now, and the ether crystals clustered to the edges of the rubble make it seem like some kind of fairyland. I hope one day I can find the end." Throughout journal entries 1 through 6, we see Spacebar mature and figure out how he wants to serve and protect Eridu. During journal entries 7 through 12, we see the devastating effects of the detonation of the Shiyu pillars firsthand. We're left on a cliffhanger, but there are a few points of foreshadowing that imply that Spacebar is still alive, but disabled from the disaster. The eerie similarities between the Aeneid and Spacebar's journal entries don't stop there. Virgil died before he could finish writing the last book. His wishes were for the manuscript to be burnt, but this was intercepted at every level, cementing it in history. This is one of the most influential pieces of literature to ever exist, and some people spend their entire lives studying it. But one writer in particular, Dante Alighieri, wrote a self-insert fanfic about the writer, a lady he couldn't marry, and yapped about some local politics. I'm sure you've heard of it, the Divine Comedy. The theme of movement can be seen in both pieces of literature and in the narratives featured in ZZZ. As we get closer to the Minerva quarters, we are reminded of Minerva's temple's significance in the story of the Trojan War. If you haven't seen my breakdown of the timeline yet, the game told us the exact date of the detonation of the Shiyu pillars in the current year. I think this is going to be important as we move into the next plotline. We know the Order is most likely going to be inspired by Dante's Divine Comedy. It was written during the 1310s and the first major piece of literature written in Italian instead of Latin. It makes sense. He coined the phrase and started a writing club called Dolce Sto Nuovo, which translated to the sweet new style. In the story, Dante has a few guides throughout the afterlife, and one of them is Saint Lucia of Syracuse, or Saint Lucia of Sicily. ZZZ confirms this is the inspiration for Lucia through character design. The eyes on her outfit and weapon could symbolize the Order, but either way it proved she is inspired by Saint Lucia of Sicily. She is the patron saint of the blind and one of the saints referenced in every book of Dante's Divine Comedy. In Canto 2 of Inferno, Saint Lucia is called upon for mercy. In Purgatorio, she helps guide Dante and Virgil to the top of the mountain. In Paradiso, Canto 32, where the Order of the Rose is described in great detail, she takes a seat in the Empyrean level. In Lucia's character design, we see the iconic eyes that St. Lucia is always depicted with. They're usually on an ornate plate or her palms, or held as spectacles almost. The teeth on her veil could also be a reference to the 9 P's on Dante's forehead that are removed as they move up the terraces in the Purgatorio. The back of her veil has the word mercy on it, which would be a nod to the first time she's encountered an Inferno, and they are asking for her mercy. Her cross-shaped hammer is in the same style that was used to decorate the church that was originally dedicated to Saint Lucia. Since it was demolished, her relics have stayed in San Geremia, a church in Venice, Italy. I'll do a deep dive when we get more lore from the story and the Order really comes into the main plot, but until then, we can expect to see more subtle nods to the cult of Vesta in the form of the Vestal Virgins being inspiration. It was an insidious organization that skirted the laws of the land and any religion at that time. It doesn't make sense that they were never supposed to be harmed, but were regularly murdered. A similar theme is already subtly worked into the main plot of ZZZ, and the state cult of Vesta is also sometimes referred to as the Order. I would love to see their critique on contemporary society through that retelling. Now, for my theory. I think Spacebar is still alive and will have a prosthetic arm and or some kind of eye patch or something wrong with his eyes. He'll be in the Order faction, but maybe not playable, and possibly the main guide for the main characters. I also think he could be named after Virgil, whose full name is Publius Vergilius Maro, or his character Aeneas. I think the Order will guide the main characters through Hollow Zero, through the Crystal Door, and to the moon because the first celestial body visited in Paradiso is the moon. These cannot be surface level connections. While we have leaks for Lucia and we know Spacebar is in the Order faction, we could also get members named Beatrice, Bernard, Francesca, or Mary. I still think the Crystal Door will borrow from the Tablet of Destinies myth from ancient Mesopotamia, but the main plot will use the Divine Comedy for massive amounts of inspiration, maybe bordering on derivative. I'm going to do a deep dive and pull quotes from the literature when that chapter comes, but until then, I have both the Aeneid and the Divine Comedy linked below. They're both public domain translations and you can read it in browser. Now, I have to get back to working on my Astro Yao cosplay, and I know you're giddy about your next nickname, so I'll see you in the next video.